An increasing number of young kids are being arrested and charged for terroristic threats because of the types of emojis they use. Now, this is becoming more of a problem because there are more instances that are being documented. Now, in most cases, the charges will be dropped once authorities realize that there's no real threat there. But the fact that they immediately get charged with terroristic threats is what's questionable here. So, a 12-year-old girl in Fairfax, Virginia, was charged with threatening her school and computer harassment because she posted a message on Instagram that included a bomb, knife, and gun emojis and the phrase, "meet me in the library." Now, she got charged. The school looked into it and they decided there's really no real threat here. It's unclear as to what happened with the charges against her. Now, remember, you get charged, you're going to be investigated. They're going to try to figure out whether or not you're a threat. In a separate New York case last year, a teen was charged with making a terroristic threat after he wrote a Facebook post that included 3 gun emojis pointing at the head of a police officer emoji. The teen ultimately was not indicted on the charge. Okay, so again, they looked into it and they realized, oh, there's no real threat here. And so in some cases, authorities are trying to decipher and figure out whether or not emojis are the equivalent of real threats, which I find insane.
Yeah, so let's lay down a TYT rule here. It's an easy one. No one should be arrested on emoji alone, right? I'm not saying you can't take emojis into consideration. So, for example, if I'm a teacher and I've got one of the kids sending constant emojis with a gun pointed to another emoji's head to another student, I'm going to look into it. I'm like, hey, so are we joking here? Or are we serious? Is there other context? Has there been any kind of verbal confrontation between you two? I think that's good due diligence from a teacher or a principal to do that. But first of all, don't arrest anyone for just emojis, right? Have a conversation and an investigation internally at the school or something first. Secondly, your first move shouldn't be arresting a student. That should be like way at the end, like, oh, I investigated a 12-year-old. It started with silly emojis, but then it turns out that, he talked about how his dad has a gun and he's been bullying this kid and he once attacked him. And then now there was another physical confrontation. I think we're going to have to file assault charges.
Yeah.
That's how that should go. Not like, I didn't like that emoji he had. Let's arrest him and then figure it out afterwards.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The emoji should be part of a puzzle, right? It should be a puzzle piece. It shouldn't be the entire puzzle itself. You shouldn't look at emojis and immediately assume that someone is making terroristic threats. Also, what I find interesting is how often we pick and choose, right? So we're living in the day and age where people will share, if you're a public figure, they'll share your address. They'll share all your personal information on social media and incite violence toward you. But that's not a terroristic threat. That's never treated as a terroristic threat when it's meant to terrorize you, when it's meant to incite violence toward you. But then you have kids that are using emojis and all of a sudden, oh my God, terroristic threats, we've got to investigate them.
And by the way, just so you know, terroristic threat doesn't mean you're a terrorist. It just means you're threatening someone with physical action. And so I knew a kid who, not all, but a lot of kids say, oh, I'm going to kick your ass. They're like, terroristic threat, and they began an investigation.
Yeah.
Right? So, but we've criminalized everything in this country. Don't criminalize 12-year-olds unless you've got excellent cause to do that. Let's first give them detention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just ask some questions. I know it's difficult. I know administrators have a really hard time doing it, but it's simple. You can use a little bit of human judgment. You can pull a student aside and say, hey, you know what? What are these emojis about? You know that this is kind of unacceptable. It seems like you're threatening a police officer when you use this sequence of emojis. Ask some questions, okay? Don't get the authorities involved immediately and attempt to ruin this person's life.